What I found when I was trying to, when I was working with these guys, trying to help them go to the next level, is they'd get stuck. And what would typically get them stuck is that they get triggered, by someone or something, and it pulls them way back down into some, I'll call some stinking thinking, some lower energy. They get into anger, fear. And you are, if you've got that going on, you do not have the most available for the task at hand. And so I'm like, what is the practice or process to, move past trauma? And you could look at all the different modalities that are out there, starting with talk therapy, EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization.
Welcome to The Breakthrough with Stephen Husted, the show that takes you behind the scenes with successful entrepreneurs, real estate investors, and other movers and shakers in the business world. In each episode, we'll sit down with our guests to explore their personal and professional journeys, including the challenges they faced, the breakthrough moments that propelled them to success, and the strategies and the tactics they used to get there. Get inspired by new ideas and strategies and get to know our guests on a deeper level. Join us for candid conversations, powerful insights, and plenty of breakthrough moments. Please help us grow by subscribing and sharing the podcast, and welcome to the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to The Breakthrough. I'm your host, Stephen Husted, and today we have a fantastic episode for you. Our guest is Brett Jennings, a real estate pro with an incredible journey. Brett's story is anything but typical. He started his real estate career just 3 days before Bear Stearns collapsed in 2008. He's built a successful brokerage, starred in a HD TV show, and now leads a top-performing real estate team. In this episode, Brett opens up about his rocky start in real estate during the financial crisis, the wild ride of starring in a reality TV show, his recent transformative experience with plant medicine in Costa Rica. Brett shares how these experiences shaped his career and his personal growth. His insights on success, trauma, and resilience are truly inspiring. So get ready for an episode filled with real talk and powerful stories. Let's dive into my conversation with Brett Jennings. All right, Brett. Thanks for jumping on today. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here, man.
Yeah.
See you.
Yeah, good to see you, man. It's been a while. I think the last time that I saw you, we went mountain bike riding at Quicksilver.
Oh yeah.
That was during COVID.
It was. And it had been many years since I'd seen you, and I was impressed with your riding skills. I was having a hard time keeping up.
Yeah, but you remember that I crashed really bad and you were just like, dude, are you okay?
I did. You went down right in front of me and I was like, holy shit. You were mentioning that one of the crashes had given you some, in the past had you got an infection or something that it was kind of hard to overcome. So I was like, oh crap, it doesn't happen again.
Well, interesting enough that you bring that up. It actually came back after that crash. Yeah. Oh, that's a way bigger story. But it led into, I ended up in the hospital actually from that one.
Sure.
But finally got rid of it. And that's emergency is a hard scenario to get rid of. But so it's something I was telling you before we got started here. Most of my guests that I bring on, I've either met them on Instagram or at Bigger Pockets conference, or I've had like Hillary Saunders on from Side recently. So it's always people that I never met, but you're definitely the first actually I've known since high school.
Yeah. So for what is that? It's like 32 years.
Something like that.
33 years.
Yeah. Did you I know I met you in high school, so I think we've known each other since high school. I don't know what point in high school we connected, but did you grow up off Hamilton in Meridian?
Yeah.
Is that where your parents live?
My parents, I grew up in the Willow Glen area of San Jose, on a street called Peregrino. Kind of interesting story. So Yeah, my parents moved to San Jose from Foster. I was born at Stanford Hospital. My parents lived in Foster City till I was 5. And then we moved to San Jose, and actually, it was Norman Mineta's house. The Norman Mineta, who the airport is named after, who he went to Washington, D.C., got elected to Congress. And after he was mayor of the city of San Jose, and then rented his house out, and we rented his house.
Oh, wow.
Which actually became an origin story that's kind of relevant to my career in real estate. So,
all right, let's just go. Let's start there.
All right. Yeah. So, you and I grew up together, like most people in real estate, backdoor into real estate after, trying your hand in craft in a number of different things. And very few things are as lucrative as real estate, as one of my sales director says. Like, it's wonderful. It's a beautiful career because it's the only place where you could probably get a C average in high school or college and still make $1 million a year. But, so a number of different things, led me to real estate, and I got my license in 2008, 3 days before Bear Stearns collapsed.
Wait, and tell me that again. You got your license how many days before Bear Stearns?
3 days before Bear Stearns collapsed. So like I'd come off of a business in financial services that's what turned me to real estate. I was like, okay, my best clients, I have 350 clients. My best clients all own lots of real estate. They're a guy in their typically late 40s to early 60s. They own 10 to 20 rentals, anywhere from $15,000 to $50,000 a month in passive income, multiple 7-figure net worth. They're not doctors or lawyers. They're just simple guys that like buy a house a year and keep them. I'm like, that's a good plan.
Yeah.
So I didn't have enough money to start out as an investor. So I'm like, okay, I'll start out as an agent and then do the agent gig. And then eventually, again, I got my license 3 days before Bear Stearns collapsed. So it was kind of an oh shit moment. My wife was 8.5 months pregnant, and you just had to do whatever it took in that market, but you really had to find a way to add value to people. You couldn't sell people in that market. You really had to help people. And those were two things that were really, I think, instrumental in laying a foundation for my career. One, you really had to help people and you had to add value, and you had to hustle your ass off.
Absolutely. That was tough.
Yeah. And then for me, coming into the market in a down cycle, I didn't know what it took to get a deal done. So whatever it took to get a deal done was whatever it took to get a deal done. That's the level of effort you had to put in. But like all my peers who had grown up in 2003, 4, 5, 6, when it was the heyday like we had in 2021, they're all crying in their milk about, oh my God, it's so hard. So I think that was a blessing that helped me. And then going through 2008, 9, 10, really focusing on short sales because that was where the market was at the time.
Oh yeah.
I ended up building a company that was processing hundreds of these things. So then all of a sudden I had all this distressed inventory, became attractive to real estate investors, ended up partnering with a real estate investor client of mine that was an agent. And we launched a brokerage in end of 2012, I think. And he was kind of a crazy guy, colorful dude, like mid 50s, overweight, like in sobriety, but like lived the total crazy level, right? He didn't give up the lifestyle. He just gave up
sobriety in other avenues.
Yeah. So, I'm like, dude, you need to be on reality TV. And he's like, I think so too. Somebody, I'm like, I think I do. I'd gone on a casting call for like one of these HGTV shows and I kept the guy's card and I call him. I'm like, I got a guy. And, he's like, really? And I said, yeah, he's this, and this is kind of, overweight mobster looking guy. One day he's driving a new Cadillac Escalade. The next day he's driving a 1970 Cadillac convertible with an American flag flying on the back. And, they're kicking in doors in homes that are squatters are in and, clearing them out so we can buy them and flip them. They go, oh, that sounds interesting. So they sent a crew and shot a pilot episode and they sent it to the network and they, oh, we'll pick it up. Looks good. So we had an HGTV show for a year. I think we sold 100 houses and did about 100 million in revenue or in sales. But he ran off with our 26-year-old assistant, like 11 months into the deal that I had hired, and blew up his marriage. And it was great for reality TV, but shitty for a business partnership.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, so that was like 20 going into the end of 2013, going into 2014. I realized, the short sale thing was winding down, and I didn't want to just be just a solo agent. I'd always kind of owned a business, and I like building teams. I like working with people and creating success with and through other people. I'm like, the real estate team is where I want to go, where I want to focus. So I moved over to Keller Williams at the time and then started growing it. And then, and I really got clear, I think a couple of years there, that I really enjoyed doing the coaching piece, because coming out of college, I had worked for Tony Robbins for a couple of years, and it was a life-changing experience, you know, as all of this stuff is, but it was freaking awesome. Like, I mean, living on the road 3 weeks a year, traveling all around the world, walking on fire more times than I could count, but really getting in with people and like digging in and going, Steve, like, what do you want to do with your life? Right? Like, let's figure it out and let's create a plan to help you do it. And that was super fulfilling work. And somewhere about second or third year in building the real estate team, I realized if I really brought all of that to my business, that it would be something, you know, that I probably could, would be a point of differentiation and really leverage. And that's really what kind of, we started to see some major success, and then grew it into, from a team into a team, I'll call it teamerage, a hybrid between a team and a brokerage. And that's what we built today. But the hindsight of the coming back all the way to the Norman Mineta store, moving into the mayor's house. So it wasn't until an interview I did in a format somewhat like this, someone was asking me, why do you do what you do? And, you know, was there any formative experiences that really challenged you to push to the next levels of success? And I look back on it and I'm like, you know what? Like, it was growing up in that neighborhood. Like, we grew up in this really nice, affluent neighborhood, and we were the only people on the block that rented a house. And it was second grade. And I remember the moment exactly. It was second grade, go to school, standing outside in the classroom, waiting for the teacher to open the door. And Michelle Guerrera, who's my next door neighbor, walks up to me. She's kind of a cute girl. I liked her. And she rolls up on me. She pokes me in the chest and says, my mom says you rent your house. And I was like, oh, I didn't know what renting, owning, I didn't know any difference, right? But whatever it was, some kind of stigma, and it wasn't good. And from that point on, you know, as a kid, you notice these things, and that like some people in the neighborhood kind of went out of their way to make it feel like we didn't belong.
Interesting.
And growing up, that put a chip on my shoulder, you know, and there was part of me that was like, you know what, fuck you. Like, I'll show you like the group to live here. And through my teenage years, early 20s, and you know, even into my 30s, like, I realized that success for me was about proving something, that I was worth it, that I was enough. And it wasn't until I did that interview that I went, holy shit, you know?
That all came back. It all came back.
But here was this girl who shamed me for not owning a home, and I end up in a business and become very successful in a business that's blessing people with home ownership.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like, is there something to that? And I started to look at the stories of successful people who have taken some challenge, crisis, trauma, whatever you want to call it, that was a mask for them, and then turned it into their message. And I think that was kind of an insight for me that just let me know, you know, there's a big plan and a design. Sometimes we don't see it, but like Steve Jobs said in his commencement speech at Stanford before he died, you can see the dots when you're looking backwards in your life and how everything lines up. But that was a big one, man. That was a big one.
It's interesting you bring that up. Yeah, that's stuff that happens in our childhood definitely is what, you know, it shapes us, good or bad, and then we carry it through, and either we're working through it as time goes on or we're not.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It sits in the background. But so are we able to talk about the ayahuasca scenario?
Well, we could talk about trauma and psychedelic psychotherapy, and sure.
Yeah.
You know, I think what's interesting is, so,
well, let's back it up. Let's back it up real quick, because I know that you and I, so I was messaging individuals. You weren't the only one that I put that out. Why I put it out to you and why I even brought, I don't know, maybe because of your mindset and like where you are, and just maybe you'd be open to it, but you were one of plenty of, like, 4 other guys that I put it out. The reason why I never went and did one of those ceremonies is, as you know, I'm clean, and my wife had a problem with that. She thinks that it's a relapse, could lead back to addiction again. And, you know, she doesn't want to see that. And I'm looking at it a whole different way. So now that I know that you went and did it, I'm curious to understand what came of that, if you're willing to share.
Yeah. And so let me set some additional context. So the story that I just shared, right, was that as a business owner and entrepreneur, recognized that it was something that shaped me, and that that was a traumatic experience, man. Like that chip on my shoulder was something that drove me in an unconscious way for a long, long time. And in this process that I've had of now coaching a lot of people to different levels of success, what you'll find and what I find is that really successful people, I learned this from a guy in my entrepreneurs group. I'm part of this entrepreneurs group, and it's guys from net worth from $1 million to $1 billion. And there's like 300 guys in the group now, 400 guys. And one of the guys that came into the group was a chief learning officer for a retired chief learning officer for a Fortune 100 company. When he comes into the group, this guy's just innately curious, and he's like, "Hey, Steve," he wants to meet with everybody. "Hey, Steve, tell me your life story. What got you to where you were?" So after 100 interviews, he comes back and he's like, "Hey guys, I got something interesting to share." He's like, "Here's what I've gleaned is that the average population indexes to trauma, meaning that like they have some life experience, some event that shaped them or fucked them up that they have some awareness of that makes them, quote, the way they are." And he's like, with entrepreneurs, it's like with high performing entrepreneurs, it's like 95%. And so I'm like, wow, this is really interesting, because I started seeing it show up in my coaching, right? I got people, I could get them to a certain level of production, success, or income, and then they would top out. And ultimately, your level of success will never exceed your level of growth, we'll call it personal or spiritual growth or development. Right? It's just, that's the way the universe works, right? The results that you create in your life through business or otherwise are just an expression of how big your universe is in your mind. And I noticed that it was, the people, hard figures are type A's, man. All triggers. And having had the experience, I worked for Tony Robbins for 2 years. After I worked for Robbins, I went to work for another guy by a series of crazy coincidences by the name of Deepak Chopra. And Chopra was more than just the mindset guy. He was originally started out as a medical doctor, pretty remarkable guy. Time magazine named him the man of the millennium, really connected well with, world leaders and spiritual leaders. And
how'd you meet him?
Body. What's that?
How'd you meet him?
How
the hell?
Sure. We'll do a 2-minute. Yeah, we'll do a 2-minute segue into the story of how I met him. So literally, I'm working for Tony Robbins for 2 years, right? And done hundreds of events, been on the road. I had 200 days clocked one year with him on the road. And I'm just like, I've learned what I needed to learn here. It's been awesome. It's been fun, but I'm done, right? And so Pasadena was the last event that in my mind, I'm like, after this event, I'm turning in my credentials. I'm done. So at the Pasadena event, we come in, we're typically a crew. We were called the Master University, the Must team. We were a sales team that would do one-on-one coaching sessions after an event and create a plan for a guy like you. Like, "Hey, Steve, what are your top 3 goals?" Create a plan for you. And if there was one of the other programs he offered that was going to help you, we'd upsell you, right? So we'd come into a city a couple days before, and the day of the event, typically we'd meet with Tony, we'd do some training, and we'd do literally a role play. So I'd sit with one of my guys, and you and I would be like, "Okay, Steve," and we'd role play the scenario. So I'm sitting across from my coworker, and he's like, "All right, Brett, what are you going to do with your life?" I'm like, I'm at a crossroads. I'm changing my job, and I'm literally kind of role playing this. He was like, "What are you going to do?" I'm like, "Actually, I want to teach meditation," which was true. Like I had my personal growth journey and loved the practice of meditation, learned it in college. And it was a game changer for me. And it was something that I did want to learn and how to teach. And he's like, "Okay, well, what's in the way? What do you need?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not an expert. I've been meditating for 5 years. I've been to India, I've been to Japan. I know how to meditate, but I'm not a teacher. I don't have a curriculum. What do you need?" I'm like, "Well, I probably got to find some kind of teacher training program, blah, blah, blah." Literally, shit you not, we walk out of this room to go to the registration area. People are starting to register for the event. And I'm standing by our booth. I hear this this woman saying the word India. And I'm like, "I just come back from India." And we start talking. I'm like, her name was Jennifer. we connected, and she's like, yeah, I've been to India. And I'm like, oh, I just came back from India. What do you do? She's like, oh, I live in San Diego and I teach yoga and meditation. I'm like, really? Where? She's like, well, I work for Deepak Chopra. And later in that event, my coworkers were like, hey, the girl from the Chopra Center keeps coming by the booth looking for you. She says to find her. So I find her on the last day. She grabs me by the arm and says, you have to come to San Diego. I'm like, whoa, okay. She's like, what are you doing after? I'm like, well, I'm heading back. I live in the Bay Area. But I'm like, actually, I have to turn in my credentials. Robbins' office is in San Diego. I do have to make a trip down there. I'll come by and see you. At any rate, I come by, see her. She gives me my mantra. I meet Deepak. Like, we talk the next morning. She's like, what do you really want to do? I said, I want to teach. And she's like, we don't have a teacher training program yet, but we're putting it together. One of the courses that's going to be a prerequisite starts next week. Come down, stay with me. We got into a relationship, and like God's hand was in all of it. It just required a pretty woman to be in the right place at the right time. Yeah, but that is the power of synchronicity when you're on purpose. And so that what I would describe as synchronicity and flow. And so I got glimpses in working with Robbins of really how to set goals, make it happen, go out there with your force and willpower and mind and intention, and, you know, set big goals, take massive action, and do that. That's one what I'll call order of creation. There's a second order of creation that I saw when I worked with this guy Chopra, because he was operating on a whole fucking nother level, right? This guy walks into rooms, environments, places, and he just has the thought. You know, his thing is have the intention with detachment, held in the energy of love. And then the whole field just orchestrates to create what you want. And I watched this shit, dude. And so it was super cool to be in the energy field and proximity of two of these really powerful kind of icons, if you will, of personal and spiritual development. And so I was going to share something here because it's relevant to what we're talking about. So at any rate, that's how I ended up with working with Chopra. And I'm trying to rewind to go back to the track that we were on. So coaching these entrepreneurs, right? Like, I'm seeing these guys that can get to a certain level of success. In my universe and world, it's like they create $1 million net worth or $1 million a year in income, and then they get stuck because what got you to where you are won't get you to where you want to go. And so having personally referenced and experienced like these places of creating from what I'll call force and willpower, hustle and grind, versus creating from a place of alignment and having intention and creating more with less effort. It's a different vibe where you're creating from. And so I'm like, what is that gap that holds people back? And so let me share this one framework here. And
I was going to say, give me an example. I wanted to.
What I found when I was trying to, when I was working with these guys, trying to help them go to the next level, is they'd get stuck. And what would typically get them stuck is that they get triggered, you know, by someone or something, and it pulls them way back down into some, I'll call some stinking thinking, some lower energy. They get into anger, fear. And you are, you know, if you've got that going on, you do not have the most available for the task in hand. And so I'm like, what is the practice or process to, you know, move past trauma? And you can look at all the different modalities that are out there, starting with talk therapy, you know, EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization. And now, you know, you and I think one of the interesting things about our shared paths coming out of college or high school was, you know, some of the psychedelic, recreational psychedelic use that we did, you know, way in the early 90s. And for me, like, I had some major shit open up for me there where I was just like, felt this like self-discovery, this, you know, expanded states of awareness, this insight, intuition, like just creativity, like all of that stuff, right? Opening up. And so at the same time, you know, recreational drug use from the cultural perspective is kind of shunned upon. And so it's like this, you know, you can't kind of put it out there. But what's brilliant is what's happened, you know, in the last 20 or 30 years since you and I had those experiences, is that a lot of certain of the psychedelics like MDMA, psilocybin, have now come into the research through the National Institutes of Health in treating veterans for PTSD.
Yeah.
And like, it's not like a pill that like, Zoloft that somebody's got to take for the rest of their life. We're talking about like one-time experience has 80% efficacy of reducing or eliminating anxiety and depression from one experience.
Yes.
You know, so we know like, okay, there's something powerful happening there that is enabling someone to move beyond their trauma. And I think Joe Dispenza, who his body of work is brilliant. If you haven't, or the listeners haven't checked it out, Joe Dispenza was a doctor, and then really he's probably one of the best people in the realm of quote spiritual science, really understanding how the mind works and how the body holds energy. But his comment is wisdom is the memory of the experience without the emotional charge, right? What's a trigger? You got a memory with an emotional charge, and it pulls you out of the game, F's you up, and takes you, somewhere you don't want to be. And so my question and curiosity was always like, okay, well, what is, how do we discharge this? And there's different modalities going from some of those substances. Breath work's another powerful modality that's now coming into the common conversation, right? About like, people think it's just, who are these hippie yoga people doing breath work? They're doing powerful work. It enables the body. It causes in fact, from a scientific perspective, the exact same thing that happens in the psychedelic experience, which is the prefrontal lobes get muted or modulated. It's called prefrontal hypofrontality. So basically the prefrontal lobes get quieted down. That's where the voice of your ego is. And when that quiets down, guess what? Wisdom, intuition, insight wakes up, and the capacity to like look at or feel or experience some of these memories that you've had from a different perspective, right? To see what I saw, the girl poking me in the chest going like, hey, you're a piece of shit. And, shaming me for not having a home, but now being able to see, wow, this is something that really put me in a position where I get to bless people with homeownership. So people can recontextualize, right, those traumas and create meaning for them in a different way. So at any rate, so there's this whole body of work, right? Like, how do we do that? There's these different modalities, and the one end of the spectrum is talk therapy, breath work. Then there's mild psychedelics like MDMA or psilocybin, which is mushrooms. And at the other end of the spectrum is like kind of some of the more extreme, deeper plant medicines that are also totally organic, which is like ayahuasca. And so really, I recently had an experience, and what put me in that place of curiosity to experience it.
How long ago was that, Brett? How long ago was it?
That was the beginning of January.
Okay. And where'd you go?
So I ended up going to Costa Rica, but what landed me there was I had a buddy, you may have known him. We went to high school with him. This guy, Ed Herzog, that we graduated with. He ended up going to Navy SEALs after high school. He was always a little bit of a crazy guy, but he goes in Navy SEALs, gets on SEAL Team 6, which is like their elite, special forces team, 20 years in SEAL Team 6. He ends up retiring Navy SEAL Master Chief, 4 tours, right?
Wow.
And the interesting thing about all those guys that go in and see combat, they all come out effed up, right? They all come out with massive trauma.
Shit.
Yeah, they see crazy shit. They do bad things to bad people, and they come out with trauma, and they usually self-medicate, right? Whatever it is, they blow up their marriages, and he was not exempt from that. But he's on this downward trajectory. A couple of years back, he goes down to South America and has some experience with the shamans in the jungle, comes back, and the dude's different.
So he's rewired. So to speak.
Rewired. He ends up going and getting a degree in traditional Chinese medicine, says, I don't want anything to do with guns. I don't want to kill people. I just want to heal people. Wow, dude, that's a pretty profound turnaround.
Yeah.
And then I had another friend of mine, same thing a couple of years ago in my entrepreneurs group, type A, hard charging guy, always wanting to put his family first, but never could. And he was kind of the thing where the business gets the best of him and the family gets the rest of him. He goes and some South America experience, shamans, plant medicine, comes back, moves his family to Australia for 2 years. And the guy's just lit up with joy. Like, hey, dude, like I always thought that if I put my family first, my business would implode. He's like, exactly the opposite happened. My business is amazing. My family loves me. Like, dude, that's pretty cool.
So let's stop there. Off going to one ceremony or what is
going to one plant medicine ceremony. And it was supposed to be a multi-day ceremony. He said in the first day, he said Mother Earth came up inside him and embraced him and some crazy stuff. And he said the shaman told him, you're good, dude, go home. And so he went home.
Wow. That's what the shaman said.
Yeah.
Do you think you have to, like anything else, do you think you have to go into these types of ceremonies, or let's say you're leading up to go do a ceremony? Do you have to start to kind of surrender? Like, do you have to go in there in a way that you're going to let go of the trauma, the demons, or whatever it's going to pull from you? Do you think you have to do that?
I think the more intentional one is about it, the more you will get out of it.
Yeah.
In the particular place that I went to, they told the story. They said, it was one person that come through their program, which is it's a 7-day, very artfully curated experience, and very intentional with both the intentions you go in with, some integrative work that happens while you're there, and then post experience integration as well. It said there was a guy who'd come through, had done a couple hundred ceremonies in different parts of South America, a lot of stuff, in the jungle on yoga mats with mosquitoes biting you. That's what a lot of us think when you just go in the jungle are. And he said that this experience, because it was so intentional, was one of the most profound, powerful experiences out of the several hundred journeys that he had done. But coming back to kind of what led me there was, okay, I had these two kind of curious experiences, and then this last summer, I'm in a real estate deal with a girl that I know, a woman real estate leader, and I'm trying to reach her because with the deal, something's going sideways on the deal. And when you try to call somebody out of the country and you get the phone, the ring tone is different when you call somebody.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm trying to reach her. I'm emailing her, texting her, nothing, right? It's crickets. Finally, we get back in touch a week later, and I'm like, where the hell were you? Were you like in South America, some freaking ayahuasca ceremony or something? She's like, how did you know?
Oh, no.
And she was like, actually, I was there with so-and-so and so-and-so. And I'm like, these are a couple other real estate leaders on the national level that I respect pretty well. And they're like, it was an amazing experience. And I was like, okay, shit, I guess I'm being called to check this out. So I put it on my goals to do it this year. And I called the place and I just started looking at their calendar. And then I found out that this guy, Michael Beckwith, was going to be there. He's actually one that curated their curriculum for the integration. And if you aren't familiar with Beckwith, he was in the original movie, The Secret, runs a non-denominational church in Southern California called Agape. He's a spiritual heavyweight. He sits on the World Economic Forum with the Dalai Lama, trying to find like worldly solutions to spiritual solutions to worldly problems. I'm like, okay, I'm there. And so this experience was freaking mind-blowing, dude.
Look, wait, stop there for a second. When you decided to do that, how did you run this past your wife? Like, I need to know. Come on, man. You just heard what I just told you.
Yeah.
I'm going to give your number to my wife, and you're going to talk to my wife so that I can go.
Yeah. I told her, I said, hey, she knows that a large part of my personal and spiritual evolution I can attribute to some of the psychedelic openings I'll call it some of the openings that were co-facilitated, I'll call it, by the psychedelics. And so she has some respect for that, right? We're not out on the weekend getting high every weekend or anything by any stretch. But I have had those experiences and shared some of those things. So she has some respect for that. And then I let her know, hey, these are the things that kind of pointed me in this direction. And I don't feel like I need to go. I feel like I'm kind of curious and I feel called to go, especially with the nature of the work that I want to do. Because what I want to do is I want to help entrepreneurs and high achievers move from, hustle and grind to get into these states of flow and so they can do bigger and better work in the world. And I think there's something with this trauma thing and being able to do that. And she's like, okay, so I go not knowing what to expect and I land in this place and it's freaking amazing. It's like, you ever been to a Cirque du Soleil show? Yeah. So it is like a 4 seasons level experience. I think there's like 150 staff for like 70 guests. The music and magic of Cirque du Soleil, like farm to table food. They have their own farm there, and in this very intentionally curated week-long experience, you got hot and cold plunges and massages and colonics if you want it. You get stem cell therapy if you like. It's freaking amazing. And then 4 nights of ceremony with 3 days, bookended with 3 days of yoga and breath work. And then through the course of the week, you're going through this experience, and man, it's pretty amazing. So and for me specifically, I did have a pretty profound, at least what feels like in my nervous system, some rewiring that occurred. And even though I knew kind of one of my core things that was driving me with this experience I shared with you, I was always just go, do. My toes always tapping under the table. People would say, oh, that guy's driven by what? Right? Like, I wasn't always able to move at the pace of my choice. And so that was one of my intentions. I want to go, I want to see and potentially let go of whatever it is that's driving me so I can move at the pace of my choice. And what I got was I got that and so much more. But the work really is about this integration, and what trauma does, or somewhere the general premise is somewhere between the ages of 2 and 7 years old, like, you come in as Steve, authentically Steve. And what's great and how you show up most powerfully is when you are just authentically Steve. And I do want to kind of acknowledge you for how you have always expressed your uniqueness and individuality, because that is a gift of yours, and you're brave in that area. And I acknowledge you for that. So most people come into the world somewhere between 2 and 7, like, this is the real them. And then the world, either some experience that happens, trauma, or an environment, starts to call them to show up differently than they really are to get their needs met. And if it's a trauma, you got to show up in some freaking different way. You got some protective strategy. And if you're lucky, like an entrepreneur, you learn how to leverage that shit and get really good at it and harness it so that it becomes a superpower for you. But if the bigger the gap is between who you really are and how you're showing up, is like how functional your life is, and probably how much you're called to addiction, because addiction is just a second class substitute for a connection to source.
Yeah.
And so the work is really, you hold 3 intentions throughout the course of the week. One is, the first intention is, show me who I've become. Like, who is this person I become that's not really me? And when you ingest the plant medicine, it's freaking crazy. It goes into your system and you can feel it. And it's, in most cases, generally, but sometimes.
What do you remember, Brett? Can you give me a little bit of, like, you said you felt it go through your body, but do you remember, like, do you recall the whole experience? Yeah. Okay.
Vividly.
Okay.
Vividly. Although you are under the influence, they say, like, one of the properties of plant medicine, or ayahuasca specifically, it's an anti-amnesia, right? It basically is pulling up and calling up any undigested emotions, memories, experiences that are in your system. And, the first thing that happens is you could purge, like, you're puking your guts. It's pretty intense. And then the other thing that you can have is some tremors in the body. The shamans explain it as like, hey, look, when you watch birds or ducks on a lake or pond, if they get into a fight and then they break up, they swim away, and then they kind of like shake it out. It's like, we as humans, we get all of those experiences all the time that are jacking our nervous system, and we never shake it out. So it's percolating and bringing to the surface all of that. And so that's one thing. The second experience you might have is what they call pinta, which is, in Spanish, is like, it's the paintings. It's visuals. It's literally sacred geometry. If you've ever been to South America, Mexico, and you see with the Aztecs and their art and stuff, you see all that stuff in 3D vivid color. Freaking amazing. Or visions, like, you'll have, I didn't per se, but you could have visions of animals and things, and boa constrictors or tigers and stuff that come into your serpents that come into your experience. And then the third experience you can have is what's called consulta, which is literally consultation or conversation with the essence of what is in this plant medicine, is the spirit of Mother Earth. You can ask it questions and she reveals herself to you and talks to you, and it's like crazy. And then the last thing is nada, meaning nothing. So you might drink the medicine and then go to sleep. And what the shamans say about that is, the medicine's going in and it is working on your consciousness, but typically it's working up your ancestral line, because there's some trauma or some things that have happened there that's so significant, like so big, that like you can't handle it. So it just puts you to sleep. And for most people who have that experience, either when they come to, either an hour later, or a day later, or a week later, boom, they'll have some epiphany about how, what the deeper meaning is that something that occurred or didn't occur. So the journey is like really this integration is what the plant medicine does. It pulls you back together. It's like breaks you into Humpty Dumpty and pulls you back together again. That's what my interpretation of it is. And in such a beautiful, amazing way.
Were you scared? Were you scared or nervous at all? Or
there was one point in my journey. There's 4 nights of ceremony in this particular place, and there was one night where I did get a little scared. Not by anything that had come up in my awareness, but I felt dehydrated, and I was like, "Oh shit, am I okay?" And then they have support and help. There was like 20 people, but I kind of was walking in the wrong direction, and then I was like, "Okay," and then I came back and I ended up being fine. But there was a little period for a short period of time where I was like, "Hey, am I going to be okay here?"
Yeah. And you knew it too. Like you knew you were going through something too that was scaring you. But they were
yeah. I mean, it definitely, most of the entire journey was this to this to this, and I mean there was some really intense emotional heartbreak that I'll share with you, because you hold 3 intentions. The first one is like, show me who I've become. The second intention is merge me with my soul at all costs, and that's freaking intense if you hold that intention, because you'll pull stuff up. And then the third one is heal my heart. And so I'll kind of share one segment of my experience that reflected that. Was the first night of the journey, and we do the ceremony, shamans bless the medicine and the music playing. And hour and a half into this is about when it takes to hit. You lay down for an hour and a half. Finally get up, music's playing, kind of getting my bearings, put my hand on my chest and on my stomach, and I'm like, man, I'm feeling some like congested like energy around my heart. And they said, you can ask it questions. So I'm like, okay, like heal my heart. And the first thing that happens, like as soon as the question comes to my mind, the answer's there. And it says, well, your dad died of a heart attack at 68. Your brother died of a heart attack at 58. And your mom died of congestive heart failure. And then she said, you want to heal your heart, heal your mother's heart. Well, okay. So nothing really else comes through about that night. Second night, we go into ceremony, and
I didn't know any of this, so this is kind of deep, which I expected you to. Okay, yeah, this is. I knew this was coming this way. I think everything happens for a reason, Brett. I have to say, there's a reason why I actually reached out to you to get you on the podcast. But you know what? It's triggering so much in me that I'm sitting here just listening to you, because I know my time's coming.
Okay. Well, that's what they say. If you're like, I'm not here to be an evangelist or, for an advocate for plant medicine per se, but what I can say is was one of the most profound, was one of the hardest things I've ever done, and one of the most profound things I've ever done. I've done a lot of stuff under the realm of personal and spiritual growth and development. But it was life-changing. So I have this experience. I ask, heal my heart, says, go heal your mother's heart. And I was like, okay. Second night, we go into ceremony, we do the same thing and take the medicine and purge again. And then like, all of a sudden I'm there and I'm connecting with my mom's energy, and my mom passed away like 15 years ago. And I flash back with my mom, and it's Christmas Eve, 1932. And my mom is getting dropped off at an orphanage with her 2-year-old sister. My mom's 7 at the time, getting dropped off in an orphanage on Christmas Eve, and her freaking heart just breaks, and it was post-depression, and her mom literally could not afford to keep her. And she just showed me that, like, I grew up in this loving household, like overall loving, pretty functional family. Nobody was ever beating me, abusing me. I wasn't sexually abused or told I was a piece of shit, but really abandonment was my thing, because my parents were both working when I was growing up. I was a latchkey kid. I had to figure it out all on my own, hoping that, my brother was the major influence in my life that I looked up to, and I realized in hindsight, I was doing a lot to seek his approval, but abandonment was my thing. And so I'm
which
feeling
is a trauma, which is a part of coming back to a trauma. It's a phase of it's part of the trauma on top of that other story. It's just another layer that you were Yeah.
Here's the thing that you recognize when you go through trauma. Most trauma gets passed down from parent to child because whatever happened to them,
True.
they end up doing usually unconsciously and inadvertently to their own kids, right?
Yeah.
And so I say, Mom, I'm with my mom and her heart shatters and it's frozen. And I realize I grew up in this loving family, but my mom could never really feel feelings because her heart was frozen. So like as a kid growing up, if I was ever sad, it was always like, turn that frown upside down. Like, you got nothing to be sad about, which from where she came from was absolutely true. But it put me in a place where I really didn't know, like, dude, I was always been a really positive guy, but it limited me in some capacity because I couldn't, couldn't go there with people, all people in all situations. And life, man, is this journey up and down. Unless you can unless you can be fully authentically you and ride that journey with people, then you're not you fully you. So at any rate, like my mom's heart's shattered and frozen. And I go, Mom, give me your heart. And she gave me her heart. And I took it in and I felt all the brokenness, dude. And it was just, it was so, but I just allowed myself to be with it and feel and heal. That is one of the things they say, like in the feeling is the healing that happens. So just going with it. And I got a riff of this quote from Rumi that I landed on when I started getting into this trauma stuff. And Rumi was this 14th century brilliant poet, right? And he says, the wound is where the light enters you. The wound is where the light. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go there. Like just boom, go deep with it and feel it. And then I got catapulted. I don't know if it was an hour later, 2 hours later, time did not exist, into some celestial realm of like just the most intense, unconditional love with my mom. That was just like, so, anyway, that was one of the very profound healing moments. And my experience was not unique, man. I sat in this room with people, 60 people, age 19 to 92, and a whole range and spectrum from, a teenage kid to a grandma. My guy next to me is a 10-time world jiu-jitsu champion. My guy on the other side is like this reality TV star that's trying to figure himself out. So it was a diverse crew, but super cool. So man, that was,
How did you feel when you were coming? I saw your post on Facebook, so I kind of got an understanding what you were doing.
yeah.
So when you flew home, did you kind of start thinking about the whole experience and did it stay with you for?
Well, they say the experience itself is about 30% of it. And then 70% of it is your integration that will happen in the weeks and months after. And so I'm a little over a month. It was a month ago that I arrived there. So I'm 3 weeks on the other side of this experience. And I'm integrating and what I saw some other really profound stuff that, just about what's happening on our planet, and the polarization that's occurring is, it's not pretty, but it's necessary, and it will draw forward. There's something MLK, Martin Luther King, said right in one of his speeches. It's always darkest before the dawn. And we got some not great stuff that's happening on the planet, but there is a bigger plan, and that we're all a part of it. And those people that I think choose to get in front of it, align with the energy that's coming through, show up for it, can be advocates for it. And it's not about plant medicine per se, right? It's just about being a point of emanation, of positivity, and grace and inspiration and love, authenticity, being uniquely you.
And that authenticity, that word gets thrown around a lot. I see it a lot on social media, and I see people posting like, this year I'm going to try to be more my authentic self. And, as a human, I think we evolve, and that is our journey. We're constantly working on that. It's just like you said, you go out to do this ceremony. We're always just trying to get a different, a look inside to find the truth of really who we are as a human.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, and you either can go down that route and take the uncomfortable part, because a lot of it's very uncomfortable to do. That's why a lot of people suppress that for so long. And then others will just engage in it and just keep going and going and going and going through it. So I want to tell you something. I thought that for years I had ADHD.
Mm.
Okay. And last year, end of the year, one of my goals was I'm going to actually go to a quote unquote ADHD doctor. I'm going to get diagnosed. I'm going to go through that whole route, because the times that I got diagnosed was when I went to rehabs and, got on medication, but the medication never really lasted more than a couple months. But do remember when I first started on the medication that it really did help. Like, oh, I'm calm. Oh, I can relax. Well, I can read a book, or I can focus on this. This is great. But then it would wear off. So I go to this doctor, and I fill out all this intake paperwork. It's very lengthy. My wife has to fill it out as well. And we go through it, and then we finally are going to meet to kind of go over it. And he's like, okay, so, I don't think you're trying to get medication for ADHD to abuse it. I don't think you are bipolar. He's going through this and this. And then he's like, but I don't think you have ADHD. And I'm like, really? And he's like, nope, I don't think you do. He's like, I think you have severe anxiety.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay. And he's like, how does that make you feel? I'm like, well, and it's just the way he was like saying, I'm like, it doesn't make me feel bad. I go, I think it's funny that I had been talking to people about having ADHD, and who knows, maybe he diagnosed me wrong, but let's just go on what he had said. She says that anxiety is very similar to ADHD. And he did an analogy that was really interesting. He said, it usually happens between the age of 2 and 7.
Mhm.
And brought up the, here you are as a human, and then you go through this trauma. And when you get this trauma in your brain, your fight or flight connects into it. And then basically says, this is the way your brain's going to be wired moving forward, and locks you in to this high level of thinking and how you move through life, which to me, I thought it was always normal. I thought being wound up, with anxiety, nervousness, the whole thing was just normal to me. And I'm coming to find out that I'm clearly that's not, normal. I took medication about a year ago this time, and it worked brilliantly for about a month, and then it wore off. But I just realized when I got on it that I was really screwed up,
Yeah.
and I'm still certain. Look, I'm like very similar to you. I like going through the journey and trying to be a better version of myself, whatever that means. And now this anxiety thing is in the mix. I did go on medication, and one moment, I think a couple days into it, I was going to go pick up my daughter from cheer, and I'm sitting at the light. I'm like, I think I want to kill myself. Just like that. So I picked up my daughter. I come home and I go, yeah, Jennifer, I think it's time to get off this one. This ain't working. She's like, why? I'm like, I feel like I'm going to kill myself. She's like, okay, let's get off that. Tell the doctor. So here's where I am in my part of this journey.
Great. So what's interesting when you describe that experience, right? And what the doctor's describing is this split that I shared, which is the body of this work. And that is like somewhere between 2 and 7, we show up different than the way we are. Your neurology, your psychoneurology gets wired that this is the way you need to be, but it's not authentically who you are.
Yeah.
And guess what? When you're not being who you are, you're fucking anxious.
Yeah.
Duh.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing, which oftentimes, in states where we modulate the prefrontal cortex, whether it's through breath, whether it's through a drink, whether through it's a smoke, right? And the monkey mind calms down, and this person you've been the world's trained you to be falls back into here, you feel a sense of peace because you're aligned. You're at atonement is the word, at one. You're at one. And I think, for me personally, the personal growth journey is about that. And I'm not, I'm willing to explore, modalities and practices and things that are maybe outside the cultural norms that like, hey man, whatever it takes to get me back to here, because here I'm good. Here I can show up for my family. I'll do whatever to be a better business person. Now, granted, that's not the path for everyone. And they do say, like in the plant medicine circles, that if you feel a calling on your soul to do this, like it'll be a stirring and you'll be like, okay, I just feel like I need to do this.
Right.
And that's not true for everybody.
And I reached out to, like, why? I don't even know why. I'm like, well, maybe Brett would be one. Try to bring somebody on. And then you go and do it. I'm like, I gotta go. Like,
Yeah. Well, I'll share with you the details of the place that I went. Yeah. And it's an amazing place. And I'm actually going to be leading a group of entrepreneurs and business owners in July. I think July 8th.
where?
To Costa Rica, to this place.
You're going back?
I'm gonna go back. I'm hosting a group of a small group. I don't know, probably somewhere between 10 and 20 people. Yeah, because it was so profound, and for the people who are called to do the work, there's a context, and as I'm sharing about personal growth and development, like this is just part of the journey, right? Of becoming, and it's not, certainly this is not something that everybody should do or needs to do at all.
Sure.
But for those that are called to do it, the vision I'm working towards is just helping, entrepreneurs operate at a higher level and be more intentional and purposeful, because they'll have more impact in the world. And that's the conversation that I'm curating both before and after the experience. So
Let me ask you a question. So I know you're over at Side now. What is that role that you're doing at Side? The coaching part.
Yeah. Oh, the coaching part. Yeah. So the Side is a brokerage platform, a tech-based brokerage platform, out of San Francisco. They have 600 teams on the platform. They're a top 10 brokerage by sales volume nationally now. They have only 4,000 agents with under 600 teams. And so they've asked me and a handful of other partners to launch their coaching program. So they'll have people that are specializing in coaching in different areas. My particular niche is helping people who want to run a real estate team kind of achieve, if they haven't yet hit the first million in GCI, hit the first million in GCI. If you've done that, then net $1 million out of your business. And if you've done that, if you choose to, and you want to get out of production and just really lead and manage a team, how to grow your business to the point with people and systems so that you can net $1 million plus out of production. And so that's the journey I've been helping people do, both inside my company and now outside my company on the Side platform. And we're launching that coaching April 1st.
Yeah, that's great. It's exciting. I'm glad you're over at Side.
Yeah.
We're now in the same brokerage. First.
Yeah. It's great. It's great. So
what made you switch?
I
mean, you like to switch it. I mean, not saying that you like to switch it up, but you're always evolving.
Yeah, always evolving. Yeah, I mean, I've in my 15-year career, I think I moved 3 or 4 times. I've been an independent broker. I've been
Keller.
At a regional brokerage, which was in Terre. I've been to Keller. I did go to EXP for a short minute, about 6 months. At the time, they were going through crazy growth, and the operationally they were not great, so it didn't work for us at the time. But it led us to Side, and the reason I went to Side was because I was at Keller Williams, and once I got clear that coaching was my purpose, and that I wanted to do that for people in my business started to grow and grow. And I'm like, well, if it keeps growing, this may have a value as a business at some point, rather than just me having being a real estate sales guy or having a team. And the value of a standalone brokerage is more valuable than a real estate team at a Coldwell Banker or a Keller Williams. So I'm like, okay, I want to make that move. And that was what ultimately led us to EXP. But then that didn't work, and Side came along and said, hey, we'll help you launch your own brand. We'll be your back office. We'll do your marketing. We'll provide all your legal support, for a cost that was equivalent or less to what it cost me when I was an independent. So I'm like, that's a no-brainer. And so they gave us the ability to launch our own brand and fly our own flag, but really have the resources of a big box behind us. So that's what's enabled us to get support the growth that we've had.
And you've been, you've had a pretty amazing career in real estate so far, Brett. I mean,
I got lucky, and I surrounded myself. I luckily attracted some really great people that believed in me at least as much, or maybe more than I believe in myself.
Where do you feel like so I know you bring up a lot about coaching. Is that what really gets you up in the morning? Do you feel like that's really your zone now? Like, what are you doing as far as real estate's concerned? are you dealing with buyers and sellers and clients, or is it your team?
I have a team. So I have a team of 8, and then under the Real Estate Experts brand, we have another 85 agents that they're organized mostly as independents. So of the 90 agents, 50 of them are independent and 40 are on teams. There's like 4 teams here. Mine is one of them. So in my team, I'll go on appointments, listing appointments with some of my clients. I like doing the training for them. And that's kind of, I'm not doing a lot of one-to-one client work.
Okay.
I'll do some personal investing, but it's not really part of the real estate business. Where I want to go from here, I'm going to take the coaching messaging. So I have a whole framework on how to scale a business to go from an individual agent to a team doing 150 plus transactions a year, netting a couple $1 million. I have a whole kind of roadmap and framework that takes people along that path. And then through this body of work that we've been talking about over the last hour, not so much about the psychedelics, but this spectrum of emotions and energy and awareness, how to scale your personal growth as you scale the business, because the business only grows to the extent that you do.
I agree with you. That's 100%.
Yeah. So I came across, and I have a whole 45-minute talk that I've been giving in different circles about how the two of these correlate. And there's this brilliant, beautiful correlation between the different stages of the growth of a business and how you grow as a person. So sharing that roadmap of people starting in real estate, going to share it outside of real estate, and with the intention to elevate the vibe of business, because business is the OS for our world. And if we upgrade the OS, then we got a better chance of keeping the thing on track. At least that's my aspirational Don Quixote dream.
Well, we could leave it at that, because I know we've gone a long time on this one, and you and I probably could talk for another 2 hours on this.
Sure.
I had a feeling, I'm like, okay, hopefully we can get, we touched on some, you had my brain going. I had to like sit here and just sit back and listen to you, because it was just one of those episodes where I think sometimes things are just put in place at the right time in a lot of ways. You know, like you having that conversation. I mean, why I reached out and said, hey, Brett, I want you on the podcast, was when you were at that ceremony. That's when I messaged you. I saw where you were at, but I had a feeling I knew where you were at, but yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, everything happens for a reason. So,
yeah,
but yeah, if people, have any, want to reach out to me on social,
where can the audience find you?
Yeah.
Cause I'll put it in the show notes too.
Yeah. bearealexpert.com is our main blog site for our real estate training stuff. We have a lot of free content and resources there. People can check that out. And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. My Instagram needs to be built out this year. So that's a project. But yeah.
I appreciate you jumping on, Brett. Seriously.
Sure, man.
This was a great episode. It was good. It was good talking to you. I don't know. We're just on the same wavelength, a lot of things too. And it's always these moments when I get around somebody that, I admire, and I just feel like they're working on themselves. They're doing things, and it's an energy you get. And so I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to jump on.
Awesome, man. I appreciate the opportunity to share.
Yeah. Talk to you soon, man.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you for tuning into our show, where we hope you found inspiration and gained valuable insights. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to stay updated on our latest episodes, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and share it with others who might benefit from it. We appreciate your support and look forward to bringing you more candid conversations and breakthrough moments in the future. Until next time, take care and keep exploring new ideas and strategies.